Hello. I want to talk about the biggest issue that I think this game has right now out of like all the bugs and server stuff, though there was like an update about the servers today, so that's good, I guess. Um, but whenever I see any sort of comparison between this game and Overwatch and TF2 or whatever, um, they always bring up choice and loadout choice and how you can customize stuff in this game. And I'm pretty sure everyone, all the devs, and everyone who's ever played this game agrees that like choice and variety and more having more viable options is overall just good. Um, but I think there are choices. There are definitely a lot of choices, but a lot of them are insignificant, and there's very little variety. So I'm going to prove that. I'm going to show the lack of variety in builds, in talents, and decisions that people are making. Um, so what I've done, I'm on an alt account right now that I used to mostly play DPS, and what I've done is I've gone through every support and I've imported 6 players' builds. On the top left, we're gonna have Jera, we're gonna have Crimson, Vex Ferdy, Cuss Cutie, Baller Steve, and me. Um, Originally, I was gonna have all of NA PPC, but I figured that probably wasn't a good idea. So I picked. There's one in each region. There's 3 PPL, former PPL supports. I'm not sure if Crimson's been to LAN. I think everyone except me has been to LAN. But anyhow, so I'm gonna show with these builds that with all the insignificant choices, variety, decisions, and all that stuff. So disclaimers before I get into this. There's gonna be some inaccuracy because I'm only gonna be showing one build. Hopefully, I got their main build. Some people don't name them like super clearly, so it wasn't always obvious. Some people don't use the same build every game. That's good. But like that's good, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. It's the points that the changes between builds are insignificant. Um, there's also like meme builds, and those should exist, but they're not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking like more competitive stuff. I'm also talking about like I'm only going to be talking about supports because that's what I know, but I'm not going to be talking about like Maelstrom Grok or anything. But even though this isn't perfect, hopefully it'll average out. So hopefully, if I remember, here's some timestamps for me going over every individual champion and the conclusion. I'm going to be going pretty quickly, so you're probably going to have to pause if you want to like look at all the builds. All right, so let's go over all the Fury builds. So these builds have 8 unique cards, 5 of which are above level 1. So looking through all these builds, the decisions are, do I want the shield card or not? And then how do you want to balance HP and ammo, which is a total of 2 decisions. And she only has 1 viable talent in Cherish. So on to Genos. He's probably the worst, but he has 5 unique cards, 3 of which are above level 1, and every build is the same. And your decisions is how do you want to balance 8 points between heal range and heal duration, which is only 1 decision. And he only has 1 valuable talent in Luminary. You could include Power Cosmium if you really wanted, but I'm not really sure how main supporty that is. So I just didn't include it. On to Saris. Saris has 8 unique cards, 8 of which are above level 1. Decisions that you have to make. Do you want range on heal or not? Do you want fade to black or not? How high do you want veil? How high do you want your self-sustain? Do you want Umbral Gate? Do you want Dark Whisper? Do you want both? Do you want alt charge or not? Do you want ammo regen or not? So that's a total of 9 decisions. I'm going to say Saris has 2 viable talents in Mortal Reach and Soul Collector, but that's only really because Vex has played Soul Collector in PPC, and it worked, I guess. So we're going to include it on this list. For Ying, she has 6 unique cards, 4 of which are above level 1. So decisions, you have 2 to 4 points to decide between Rewind, Fracture, or Clone HP. So that's 3 decisions. And she has 1 viable talent in Life Exchange. For Grok, so it's important to note that no one really plays main healer Grok. Like I tried to get all the Spirit's Domain builds, but like nobody really plays this guy, so it's kind of hard to determine whether anyone has actually like found the build. But the cool thing about these is that there are no cards that are in all 6 builds, which I think is great. Decisions. There's a lot of decisions for this guy. Do you want Gale or not? Do you want ammo? And if so, how much? Do you want regen? If yes, how much? And with your right click regen or with passive regen? Do you want totem range or not? Do you want totem duration or not? Totem HP or not? Totem speed or not? Regen on Ghost Walk or not? Totem on speed on Ghost Walk or not? And then Ghost Walk CD or not? Which is a total of 14 decisions, which is pretty insane. I put one viable talent because if you're talking about main healers, I don't think you could play Spirit's Domain. Yeah, so it's pretty good for Grok. For Pip, he has 8 unique cards, 6 of which are above level 1. Decisions that you have to make. Do you want ammo on right click or not? How much reload do you want? Do you want Acrobat's Trick or not? Do you want Pep in the Step or not? How much potion range do you want? And then do you want heal and weightless or not? Which is 6 decisions, and these are all combat medic builds. I don't think you could run Mega Potion as a... I mean, you probably could run Mega Potion if you really wanted to, but I didn't include it. For Damba, we have 7 unique cards, 5 of which are above level 1. So decisions, do you want Eerie Presence 3 or 4? You get to choose between 2 of Sliver CD, Self-Sustain, or Gourd CD. And then you get to split 9 points between DR and Speed, which is 4 decisions. And he has 1 viable talent in Spirit's Chosen. For Io, 6 unique cards, 5 of which are above level 1. And your decisions, how high do you want your Self-Sustain? Do you want Moonlight? If yes, how high? Do you want Speed? If yes, how high? Which is 5 decisions. And she has, I honestly forget the name. Goddess's Blessing is her only viable talent. And finish it out with Grover. He has 9 unique cards, 4 of which are above level 1. So your decisions, do you want Root cooldown? If yes, how high? Do you want Heal cooldown? If yes, how high? Then how high do you want your Heal reset? Which is 5 decisions. I put 2 viable talents because, I mean, 99% of the time you're going to be running Deep Roots, but I think Rampant has a place. And now we're going to go for Corvus, keeping in mind that he's new. And for some reason, I couldn't import a build in this slot, or I couldn't change it. Anyhow, we have 9 unique cards, 6 of which are above level 1. So your decisions, do you want speed or not? And if not, do you want sustain or do you want bulk? Which is 2 decisions. He has 1 viable talent in spreading influence. Alright. With all that out of the way, let's go over some averages, because that was a lot of numbers, and let's put this into something that like makes more sense that we can get some use out of. So, on average, 7.8 cards were used across 6 builds. 5.8 were above level 1, and there was an average of 5.1 decisions being made. So, basically you could basically say there are around 8 viable cards. There are 6 cards that are viable as not 1-pointers, and you have to make an average of 5 decisions. But averages are a bit wonky, because remember Grok, he had like 14 decisions or something, which is like way above everything else. So without Grok, everything drops a bit. There's an average of 7.3 unique cards, 5 that can be 1-pointers, and 4 decisions. And remembering this is all out of 20 potential cards per champion. So if you do the math, there's 200 cards that you can choose from to make a build across all supports. 61% of cards are not being used, and 71% aren't being used above level 1. So you could also view that as 40% of cards are being used, but only 30% are being used above level 1. So we're looking like the cards that matter, the 30% of cards that matter. That's the big number to take out of this. I listed only 2 champions of having more than 1 viable talent. Again, this isn't like super definitive. This isn't like a perfect study or anything. Like I don't have the high-res API, or I have the high-res API, but like the point is, this isn't going to be perfect. But hopefully, the point that like 5 decisions to make isn't good. Um, these numbers are not good. Basically, most of the time when you make a build for a support, you're making around 4 to 5 decisions from around only 8 cards for only 1 talent. That's the big point behind this video, is that despite all of the choices, there's really not that many. And if you go back and look at the builds, they're really not that different from each other. So that's all the number stuff. Everything else is just going to be subjective feedback based on my interpretation of the numbers. All right. So since we've agreed that variety is better, and 4 to 5 decisions from 8 cards for only 1 talent is not much variety, how do we fix this? How do we make more things viable? So the big challenge here is that it's difficult to make cards that are viable at level 1 or at lower levels, but not absolutely busted at higher levels. And it's also difficult to make different talents viable. So let's talk about talents first, because if more talents are viable, then you're going to see like more builds complementing those talents. Like if people played Ripened Gourd Damba as well, then you'd see more builds with like many gourds, the gourd CD card at level 5, but you'd only see many gourds in 3 builds, or in 4 builds, sorry, and then it's like run at 1 or 2. So most support builds, let's find a good example. Grover has good builds, good talents. So most of them follow the general formula of healing, damage, and utility. This idea is good, but the balance isn't. Some supports have 2 healing talents, like Damba has Ripened Gourd and Spirit's Chosen, Grok has Totemic Ward and Spirit's Domain, Pip has Mega Potion and Combat Medic. So you're usually just going to end up with one talent that just does more than the other, right? If 2 talents are trying to do the same thing, you're going to do the one that does that thing. You're going to pick the talent that does that thing better. Some supports' healing talents aren't balanced well. Io's Lifelink does nothing, and Dredge has a card that heals for more than an entire talent, which I think is hilarious. Fury has Solar Blessing, which is just, it's a cool idea, but the balance and the execution is kind of bad. Some supports utility talent is pretty bad. I'd include Corvus's Dark Gifts under that category. You could include Ceres's Agony talent there. So basically, the point of all this is that some of the lesser played and less viable talents should be reworked to fit the main, the support, utility, damage formula, so there's less overlap between the talents. And if you have less overlap, you have more things that different talents can be viable for. And if you have more talents being played, you're going to have more loadout choices. So with cards, let's move on to cards. There's a lot of mandatory cards. An average of 3.4 cards were running at least 5 builds, and they usually took up most loadout points. So basically what I mean by that is that if you look at Damba builds, you have Eerie Presence, Possession, and Swift Spirits. And they're all run at least 3, usually 4 or 5. So, I mean, you could go on, right? Like, if Damba's not the only one, you could look at, I mean, I don't want to point out Genis, but like, you look at Ying, Brittle 5, Carry On Free. Like, a lot of these cards are mandatory to be viable at the highest level. So, like, of course you're gonna have meta builds, but the goal of this is variety. So first of all, changing talents so that there are more meta builds would be good, right? You could have like a meta Cherish build and a meta Solar Blessing build or something, assuming you can change Solar Blessing to to be gooder. Um, so in builds that had more tended to have more variety, there was usually a different way to do things. Like if we look at Ceres, right? All these builds have some way to survive, but it was usually a decision that people made between, do I want to run HP? Do I want to run speed? And then how do I want to run speed? Do I want to like have Umbral Gate or Dark Whisper? Do I want to have a super high level of Veil, or do I not want to have Veil at all? How do I like having different ways of accomplishing the same goal and having them be equally viable is good. Like having HP being good and having Umbral Gate being good is fine. Having I'm gonna show a card. Having Duskwalker and Fade to Black, one of these cards is objectively better than the other. So having these different ways of accomplishing the same goal that are equally viable is very good for loadout variety. Um, there's also more variety in builds where you ran some big card or not. Like if we look at IO, some of these builds don't have speed, right? So you'll see more variety in them. You could also look at Furia. Some of these, well, one of these builds doesn't have shield guard, and you get more variety that way. To look at Ceres again, some of these builds have what's this called, Soulforge, right? Which some people don't like. I personally don't run it. But having this big card that you can either run or not is really good for loadout healths. Pip has one too. Like some people run Pep in the Step on Pip, so these two builds. That changes the build a lot, right? Because you're running Acrobat's trick now and the other ones, or maybe you're not. You know, so having some cards that either like good, like just these some big cards is what I wrote in my notes. I don't know if that's a good way to call them. Having those tended to work well. Also having good one pointers. Damba's Self-Sustain card, Furia's Lightforge, Ying's Rewind. Having those cards, like just having good options and one pointers, tended to have a lot of use, a lot of just having good one pointer options, because there are going to be one pointers in builds. So having a lot of good options for those is good. A lot of cards are not good. They're just not balanced well. Look for Damba. We have Pungent Gourd, we have Spirit's Touch, and we have Snake Pit. These cards are really never going to be run ever, especially above cards like Possession and Swift Spirits, unless they get either heavily buffed or reworked. So there's a whole bunch of examples of these where cards are just not good, and there's definitely potential to either buff them so they're maybe more viable and we see more variety, or to rework them and maybe increase some more interesting stuff, because these are pretty boring cards, right? Like, and if you look at some of Corvus's cards, like some of the things there are pretty interesting, right? Like if you look at this card is super interesting, right? Like the team is coming up with good ideas. So I'm sure they could come up with some really interesting things to rework old cards. Something that I found was interesting is that on supports that have been around for a while, like Damba, like Ying, like Furia, Genos isn't really a great example, but Damba, Ying, and Furia for sure, the builds tended to be more similar. So this could just be a case of like people figuring them out over time. But at the same time, before this card was reworked, it used to be 30% move speed for 3 seconds, I believe. Like that card started getting use. So it's not like these builds will be stale. It's just sometimes there's not good options. But it is interesting to note, I think, that the newer supports have more variety. Maybe that's just better card design over time. But basically, as a summary, change the talents so they match the support, utility, damage, so there's less overlap. try to balance talents for higher levels, so there's more reasons to run more than just one. Have different ways of accomplishing the same goals with cards. Have some big cards that you either run or don't. Have more good one pointers and rework unviable cards. All right, that's all I got. These would be like really big changes probably if they were to go through, like reworking a whole bunch of cards. So ideally they'd happen like at the start of the season, but I mean we're not scared of big changes. We just remove the entire off tank rule, right? Um, but yeah, hopefully some of this gets through to like high res or the AOC or something, because this is something that's like been in the game or an issue that's been around in the game for a while, I think. And I think there's a lot of potential here. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed.